Hello, Impact Makers. I'm Virginia Cincromani, a sustainability trainer, coach, and author. Welcome to the Good Communicator. You're probably wondering, what's the Good Communicator? It's your go-to podcast built exactly for you, the sustainability professional, to help you turn sustainability from a hurdle to triumph. Here, we break down the art of effective communication to make sustainability irresistible and co-create new futures. Come on a journey with me as we dig into proven frameworks and actionable strategies and demystify the process of influencing others in every episode. From building trust and using empathy in communication to overcoming resistance and inspiring action, we craft, we inspire, we co-create the perfect message that doesn't just remain in the head, but moves hearts towards sustainable change. Hello, Mike.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Thank you for accepting to come on my podcast. I've known you for a long time, I feel. For a very long time. How are you today?
I'm really well, thank you. And, it's great to be sort of sitting down and having a conversation with you about communication, sustainability, and we'll unlock in a minute, but 90% of what sustainability seems to be at the moment is about science and technology and numbers and facts. And we need to reach out and engage with people emotionally as colleagues, as investors, as customers, as citizens. So it's going to be a great conversation. Really looking forward to it.
Me too. And actually, I need to mention this. My new book, The Good Communicator, which is podcast is loosely based on. You were so kind to write the foreword. So, and it was an amazing foreword, by the way. So I'm so excited that you decided to help me out there. So thank you.
I love reading the book, and again, we will sort of talk about some of the themes that you were raising. But again, the vast majority of our efforts seem to be about talking even more about the science, and the science is really important. I say that as a scientist, we need science, but we need to bring it to life for people as well. And otherwise, we are doomed to see the world burn around us. So the more we can talk about communication engagement, the better.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, obviously, you are a very respected figure in the sustainability world, in the communication of sustainability world, I would say as well. I mean, your LinkedIn is exploding. It's been for a few years. You got such a massive following as well. And you do share a lot of news. You share a lot of your ideas around that. And I think that's, part of the work is actually to get people to know what's happening, but also with a little angle. And of course, you were involved a few years ago in a massive project that had, it was really pioneering, I think, in the industry. It was Plan A with Marks and Spencer. You were one of the architects behind that. So tell me a bit more about that, first of all, because I think people will be interested in understanding how do you actually deal with something that is brand new in an industry that is has lots of issues, which still has, but I think we've made a lot of progress there also because of your project. And what was the experience like? And then maybe we can talk about the communication and how that played a part in it.
It's such a good question, Virginia, because I think it's quite a time ago now. We launched Plan A because there is no Plan B for the one planet we've got. Back in 2007, 17 years ago, it's so long, but it allows you to take a step back and understand what we did well, what we didn't, what we learned, etc. So you have the perspective of history now. And clearly I've been testing that through my, the 12 years I stayed at Marks and Spencer after launching that plan. Huge amount of learning there as well. Yeah. And the 5 years since then when I've been working more broadly across the economy with lots of different businesses, testing the ideas. So let me just spend a couple of minutes unpicking why we launched it and why communication was so very important to its success. So back in 2006, Al Gore had just launched An Inconvenient Truth, sort of the first big, very public seminal book or film on what's happening. And again, the film point is really important. It reached many more people because it was brought to life through the film as well as a book that could be written as well. But we saw that we've been working hard on just making Marks and Spencer less impactful, reducing its footprint on lots of different issues in lots of different ways for 10 years. So had all the other UK retailers, people like Waitrose, their Co-op, Tesco, Sainsbury's, huge respect for what they were doing as well. But we decided, having watched An Inconvenient Truth as a leadership team, and our chief executive at the time, Sir Stuart Rose, now Lord Rose, took his entire top 100 leaders to the cinema to see An Inconvenient Truth, the power of engagement, even more.
Right.
And we walked out of that saying, we've got to do something different. What's different about what we're doing today? And we came up with 4 ideas. One is that we needed to tackle all the issues in a sort of numeric, qualitative way. It wasn't just about having a little bit of a campaign on energy there and waste there and human rights here. It all had to be joined together. It needed targets, deadlines, reporting and governance, all the usual things about sustainability, but on steroids. The second thing, though, much more interesting in terms of this conversation, we were clear that we had to integrate it into the wider business. Now, Marks & Spencer is a small retailer. I think it employed at the time about 80,000 people. I led a team of 10 that sort of encouraged everybody else to do sustainability as part of their day job. So we tried to get people to do sustainability as part of their day job, which we can come back to in a moment. And just as an aside, calling it Plan A because there's no Plan B for the one planet we've got, rather than Marks & Spencer's Sustainability Plan, was worth its weight in gold. But we only got there on the very last day before we launched it. A very good colleague of mine, Robert Nuttall, head of internal communication, said, Marks & Spencer's Sustainability Plan is so boring. It's not going to connect or engage internally or externally. And he worked with a couple of consultants to come up with Plan A because there's no Plan B for the one planet we've got. And that meant forever and a day, whatever job you were doing at Marks & Spencer, big, small, whether it's salt reduction in food, better factories in Bangladesh, working with Scottish hill farmers, it was always Plan A. So the power of engagement, transformation was really important. The third part of it was to build a business case to show that by becoming more sustainable, you can become more successful. And that's critical in terms of engagement as well, for your commercial colleagues to feel that this is not just doing it to save the planet, very important, but not just for that, it's making the business win as well, critically important in terms of engagement. So that's communication and engagement for me as well. And the fourth part of it said we'd partner with the wider sector, huge competitors of ours, all the businesses I've already mentioned, working very hard in this space. But to change the world of palm oil, human rights, better factories in the clothing industry, you ain't going to do it on your own. So we had to engage competitors and peers and suppliers to work together and change, engagement and communication as well. So in essence, engagement and communication was right at the heart of Marks & Spencer's Plan A right from the beginning, even though it's taken us a little bit of time to be able to step back and truly understand that.
That's fascinating. I mean, I love how also the idea came from, an inspirational piece, like, the Al Gore movie. And that means really was driven by vision, not by, the economics behind it. Of course, there are side advantages to engage in that way, but it's amazing because that's probably drives a lot more engagement, like you said, than just say, we need to put sustainability into our agenda as well.
Virginia, just very briefly, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head there, because to me, engagement in the widest sense of the word is lots of things. It was a moment in time, Al Gore. It was an inspirational leader, Sir Stuart Rose, that said, I want to be the world's best at this. It was the Plan A transformation brand name that brought all these many different things together. It was building a business case to make it feel real and relevant to people working really hard to serve customers under lots of pressure in a very, very sort of competitive marketplace. And it was about reaching out and changing the system as well. Without each of those building blocks, it would have failed. So there's a real risk that we sort of polarize this into it's all about boring science or it's all about a marketing campaign. The truth is engagement spans everything.
Absolutely. And because, like you said, this is something that happened a few years ago, so nearly 20 years now, surely the world was a different place at that time. Surely, the supply chain weren't ready to hear this, or at least, some of them. And even the employees were like, what are you talking about? So I'm sure there will be there's nice stories around the challenges, because it's all well and good to say, yeah, we need, to do this, and it's amazing and everybody can get involved. But like you said, it's the science, it's the engagement, it's the customers, it's the supply chain, etc., etc. How did you do that? What challenges first of all come to mind, and how did you address them?
I think the first challenge is cut through. So for any business, but particularly retail, which is a very here and now business, operating on quite thin margins, just in time, everything's flowing through. And remember, Marks and Spencer is a tiny business in the world of global retail. It sells 3 billion items to 32 million customers from 1,000 factories, 20,000 farms. It's got 80,000 employees. That feels quite a lot of stuff. Walmart's 25 times bigger than Marks and Spencer. You do the maths. I mean, it's huge. And all those people are working so hard, even though, the pandemic, the cost of living crisis have happened now, there were things like that happening then. So all the time you're trying to cut through into people's busy lives to say, don't just see this as a one-off day where we talk about sustainability, then back to everything else, and we'll come back to sustainability once a year with a report back to you. You've got to see this and be part of this every single day. And that was hard, but we built, by having this Plan A brand and using it hugely internally across our business. We have Plan A champions in every shop, colleagues working in shops who are also championing the fact that we need to cut food waste, reduce giving out plastic bags, work with the local community. That made it real and tangible to people every day. And there's that famous saying, a dog is not just for Christmas. Well, sustainability is not just for one day. It has to be 365 days a year. So my first piece of learning is you've got to have that big brand, but then you've got to activate it through lots of little things all of the time, or it's soon forgotten. I think that's the first piece of learning. The second thing that helped to a degree was all our competitors or peers, all the retailers and brands I've spoken about already, we're doing something in this space. It didn't feel like Marks and Spencer was uniquely out there on its own with this mad crusade. Everybody else was sort of talking about it. I think M&S brought it together more coherently at the time than everybody else. It's not to say that we weren't working hard behind the scenes, but it had a reference point, and I think that's really important. And again, Al Gore helped tremendously at that moment in time to say this is a discussion that's going on beyond us as well. So there's lots of reasons that you've got to fight for space. The third and final piece of learning is the first plan that we launched was written in about 70 days in a lot of secrecy, 6 good people locked away in a room, Flick Howard Allen, Richard Gillies, David Gregory, Christian Hundle, Olivia Ross, Claire Foster. All these people were small in a team writing a plan in great secrecy. It was launched in a rush. The chief exec said to the rest of the business, look, we've done this on your behalf. The plan never stands still. So the evolution of the plan into a second, third, fourth, fifth generation had to rightly then democratically involve the entire business in co-creating the next set of targets rather than imposing them from the centre. And that's hard because people have points of view. I don't agree with this. It's difficult. I think the number should be 20%, not 30%. So you have to have this much more democratic debate and negotiation within the business, which at times can be painful and take time, but gets buy-in because people feel that they're my targets that I've been involved with developing, and it's going to be tough to deliver, but they're my targets as well. So all the time, that engagement spectrum is evolving.
So obviously you've been in the industry for this time, and how has that evolved? What do you see today that is consequence of that work that you did, but maybe not just for Marks and Spencer, for other retailers? So what do you think is the major lesson that was learned in the industry?
And I think we've learned lots, and we're still learning lots. Let's be really clear. We're still in the foothills of the Everest of change, sustainable transformation that we need. So let me just offer a couple of observations. I think we all dashed to start communicating with our customers too soon. So a little bit of it was the risk of greenwash. So it suddenly looked like, could you prove these claims that you're making? And I think a lot of businesses didn't have enough substantiated evidence to support what they do. So there's a greenwash issue. The second issue is it just appeared a little bit out of context for people. People who walked into a shop that wanted to sort of buy the food for lunch or buy a dress for the evening out, and suddenly we were talking about saving the world. And that feels like a big leap for people walking in, why am I walking into a shop and suddenly talking about saving the world? And I think we needed probably a slower build and burn to take consumers or customers with us over a period of 1, 2, 3 years before we did a big bang. I think the third piece of learning is really important. We tried to market as Marks & Spencer Plan A as a brand to our customers, almost like an Intel Inside. This is Marks & Spencer with Plan A inside. Every product that you buy is becoming a bit better and more sustainable. And Plan A was tremendously powerful as an internal communication vehicle for suppliers, the rest of the industry, for people who engage with it every day. For a customer that wanders in for 5 minutes once a week or once a month, what was that about? And the biggest piece of learning for me is actually we had to position Sustainability Plan A as a reinforcer of the one reason that people shop with Marks & Spencer in their own mind, which is the pursuit of quality. People pay a little bit of a premium Marks & Spencer for quality food and quality clothing. Where Plan A sustainability was seen as reinforcing that, this is great raw materials, produced well by good people, well treated, for you to have a quality outcome, that worked. And if you look at the Marks & Spencer food advertising now, so much of it is about Plan A, but it doesn't talk about sustainability per se. It's talking about working with farmers to produce high quality goods in terms of animal welfare, in terms of the environment and social issues as well. So sustainability had to come down a level to be a reinforcer of why you shop with Marks & Spencer, not the primary reason. So these are all bits of learning I think that we've all had on the journey. And the fourth and final thing is, and we can unpick in a moment, we now have the tools with big data, with AI, with machine learning to be able to gather all that data on the 3 billion items that M&S sells, to prove points, but also to make it easier for customers to buy in a more sustainable way, which we'll come back to. So again, we've got a series of tools today that we didn't have back then when we were trying to do all with spreadsheets.
I mean, this is so good also as learning points that the people that are listening or watching us now can actually take home, because, you know, there are certain themes that are recurrent in sustainability. And the one that I want to pick on is that you really cannot shell shock people into say, sustainability, there you go, now you have to do it.
Yeah.
It has to be, there is a story to be told, they have to be led there. And also sustainability sometimes has to be anchored to something else that they are already appreciating doing. In that case, it was the quality of the food. Actually, this is an enhancer. It's not something that takes away from it.
Yeah.
And I think that way you lower the barrier of acceptance of something new and alien for it. Because I don't know whether you have the same feeling, but sometimes I feel I live in a bubble because everybody I surround myself with believe in sustainability, live more sustainably, etc. But actually the real world out there might not be at the same level of understanding of what we're dealing with. So I think we forget that, and taking people on a journey is so important.
And Virginia, just building on that, because we've all seen hundreds of customer insight studies about how people feel about green purchasing. Of course, they want to save the planet and they might pay a little bit more for it. And we're all a little bit skeptical about it. And I think we misunderstand that insight and research in a couple of ways. I've looked at hundreds of surveys, and many of them within Marks & Spencer over the years as we followed customer sort of engagement with what we knew as Plan A. And I think I segment people into 4 specific groups. 10% of people like us live in the bubble. They might be full-time sustainability professionals, or they might like try and live a sustainability lifestyle, but with 10%. The other extreme, 20% of people not engaged, mainly driven by poverty. They just have other things and other rightful pressing needs in their lives just to get through that day and that week rather than save the Arctic in 40 years' time. It's the 2 groups in the middle that we walk past and we don't engage properly. 35% of people are light green consumers. And this is my point about quality. They're interested, they're engaged, they think it's important, but they want great clothes, they want great food, they want great holidays, they want to be able to get around effectively and efficiently. They want a good life. And if you can use sustainability as a reinforcer in that life and make it accessible and desirable and easy, they'll come with you. And then there's another group of 35% who are really concerned about the future, utterly through the lens of locality. And I'm just going to say this because I was born in Bradford in the north of England. Born in Bradford, live in Bradford, die in Bradford. What's Marks & Spencer doing for Bradford? And I think when you start talking about 30 years from now, net zero, Arctics, Amazons, ice caps, etc., it feels very distant. And what this group of people are really concerned about is help me, participate through local allotments, cleaner air, cleaner rivers, better sort of jobs and prospects for my children, safer streets, the health and well-being of my own family. If you can show me that by participating, I and my family can have a better future and life, and that's replicated 8 billion times through 8 billion conversations with people on the planet, great. But don't expect me to get involved with 2.1 degrees of heating or 3.4 degrees of heating and net zero and science-based targets, scopes 1, 2, and 3. Not relevant. And it's these two groups in the middle that make or break our journey. And for them, communication is absolutely critical.
Totally agree. I love that. I think I'm going to put a little graphic on when I edit it, because I think people need to see it with their own eyes. But it's true. It's the movable middle that sometimes politicians, well, not sometimes, all the time, politicians really target, because they know they can't convince the unconvincible. What's the point of wasting energy? It's really those people that are already engage in some ways that you can bring towards you. And that's, I think, one of the mistakes that lots of sustainability professionals make, leaders. They try to convince everybody, they're trying to preach, they're trying to reach as far. And I mean, it's understandable, but actually, if you are a bit more strategic, if you already show people that you can give them a better quality of life, and again, it has to resonate with them, it has to be relevant to them. Otherwise, all of this, like you said, is net zero, 2 degrees, who cares? It's actually how all of this change their lives and make it better. And there are lots of people there that could resonate with the message if you just change the accent, I would say.
Yeah, and remember what I've just said. 80% of people are engageable.
Yeah.
We just need different ways of doing it.
Exactly.
And what works so very, very well for the 10% who are really worried about greenwash, really worried that big business and big government are not taking this seriously because the world is burning. And we can see that every day. We're angry with the lack of progress around us. But what works for that 10% doesn't work for the other 70%. And we've got, as professionals in this space, to be confident that we can have different conversations which have the same outcome, but the different conversations.
So how have you used all of this amazing learning in the second phase of your career, let's say, post Marks and Spencer? What have you done?
Yeah. So I left M&S in 2019, and I'd had a blast. 19 years, but I've got a bit of grey hair, a bit tiring, sort of trying to change a large organisation. And it was time to take a step back. And I thought about becoming another chief sustainability officer in another big business. But then I thought, you've done it. And there are so many good leaders coming through now, 10, 15, 20 years younger than you. Step aside, let them come through and do things better. So I've just been consulting and working across the economy. And again, I wanted to get out of retail and FMCG that I know so very, very well, and try my hand at other sectors as well. But bringing it all together, I think there are three fundamental questions that shape how I operate as a consultant. I think more generally, we need to think about these things. And I call them the why, the what, the how. And I'm going to come back to why engagement is so important to all three at the moment. Why do I need to become sustainable? That's the business case. Okay, we'll come back to that's the strategy, that's the big picture. The what do I need to do to become sustainable? That's the engine room of change. That's the reports, the targets, the numbers. It's the engine room of getting things done. So it's not greenwash, you're actually doing the doing. And the third bit is how do I integrate this into my big busy business, which is the humanity that we've been unpicking, engaging colleagues, customers, owners, suppliers, the wider sector, society more broadly. Now, what you typically find is lots of businesses run to the what. What do I do straight away? And that's really important. I'm glad they do. They set a carbon target, a water target, human rights target. Brilliant. And that's what gives us credibility and saves the planet. But unless you've got the strategic intent for what you're doing, so remember what I said about quality at Marks and Spencer. The ultimate, and this is post-rationalisation learning, the ultimate intent of Plan A was to reinvent the word quality for the 21st century. 20th century quality being about functionality. Buttons didn't fall off shirts, packaging didn't leak. The early 2000s, every business is doing that pretty well. Marks and Spencer has lost its point of difference on functional quality. it had to reinvent the word quality for emotional quality as well. This is good for you, but also good for the planet, the people who produced it as well. That's new quality. We need to own that word in this new marketplace. Once you've got that strategic intent and everybody's nodding their head saying, we are a quality business, I understand the rationale for doing it, I understand why you're asking me to do another task, that was critically important. So the why are we doing this is so important. Once you've got the why, the engagement flows from it. And then the how is saying, don't just leave it to this specialist team in the middle of the business, 10 people out of 80,000 who are doing reports, meeting Greenpeace and Oxfam to discuss it, discussing with government new laws and regulations, producing reports. Actually, you have got to do this. And actually, one of the most important commitments we made in Plan A, second iteration, was commit that all of those 3 billion individual items, shoes, ready meals, bunches of flowers, bottles of wine, had to have at least one Plan A story to tell by within a decade. So that was saying, in effect, this is not going to be about a niche organic range over here, which you can have if you're part of the 10%. Everybody who shops at Marks and Spencer is putting in their basket a product that is better than it might have been. Then it's one story, then it's 2, then it's 3, then it's 4, and suddenly it's a long way towards being a sustainable product. So suddenly every commercial team at Marks and Spencer had to be engaged in developing a plan for Plan A being integrated into their product mix. So the what do you do, shifted from talking about carbon and water and human rights audits, which matter to me and a small number of people in the business, to the products we actually sold to 32 million people and 80,000 people handle and see every day. So it became a product story, which is much more relevant to everybody else, not a carbon story. That was secondary. So these are the things that we learn, the why, the what, the how. And that's what I test and work with now with different businesses in different sectors. What I would say, the final point is the how, that final engagement question, is the one that most businesses still forget. They don't work hard at it. They'll have a launch party to say, we've got a new sustainability plan, we've won an award, bravo, for one day. And then for 364 days of the rest of the year, forget it. Engagement, you have to work at every single hour of every day to drive things forward.
Absolutely. I think, I was talking to somebody the other day about how actually, somebody called it greenwashing. So it is not necessarily forgetting to do it, but being scared of greenwashing. So they do the right things and maybe they work towards them, but because maybe their strategy is not completely foolproof, they're scared of sharing it with their customers, they're scared of sharing it with the wider public in case that they incur into, whatever police that's going to stop them and say, gee, this is not right, or, you are punished for having said something that wasn't quite right in terms of the science behind it, although their intentions are mostly good. And so how do you, do you see this in the industry as well? So people sort of hiding their sustainability efforts in that sense?
Yes. And again, it's this whiplash of extremes. We go from greenwashing, which is a terrible thing to do, to lie about what you're doing, to the other extreme of green hushing. You're doing it well, but you don't say anything to anybody. Okay. The truth is always in between. So I want to see businesses tell stories to their customers and their colleagues to inspire them to say, this is where we're at, this is where we're going, that you can be part of this by buying a better product rather than a bad product. But there's a good way and a bad way of doing it. And again, remember that quality word. I'm just using that as the Marks and Spencer example. Every business has a unique word that describes it and defines it. How do you integrate sustainability into that one word that defines your business, whether it's B2C or B2B, and use sustainability to ladder up through that? That's how you get confident that you can tell stories that you're proud about and they've got integrity as well. The second part of green hushing is they're not just talking at your customers, your consumers. It's about being a citizen business, your willingness to lobby governments for positive change, to support positive policy requirements. And if I'm worried about one thing at the moment, it's that too many businesses have used their understandable worry about greenwashing their products and services as an excuse not to carry on doing the advocacy that's required behind the scenes as well. And again, be really clear. It doesn't matter how good you are as an individual business. It doesn't matter what Unilever or Marks and Spencer or Patagonia or anybody does. If the entire economy doesn't come with us, we burn together. Okay? So if you're a business, you need to be there advocating positively for change in corridors of power and working across the sector to drive change together. Because again, little Marks and Spencer trying to change the world of palm oil production using a few hundred tons and a few thousand different products, a liquid commodity bought 7 steps away from Marks and Spencer in the value chain. It's impossible to on your own. You have to work with Tesco's and Sainsbury's, Pepsi and Coke, Nestle, etc. Have to work as a sector. So be careful about your product claims, but be a positive advocate for change behind the scenes and absolutely sat at the table driving collective change for your sector.
So it's really also about, I suppose, in that scenario, about owning your mistakes, owning the fact that sometimes we don't get everything right, but we are on the journey. And I think that's very hard for, especially certain industries, in case their reputation gets harmed.
And we have to remember, we live in a social media bubble that's very unforgiving.
Yeah,
when we launched Bly, there was no such thing as Twitter and all the other stuff we have to deal with now. It would probably have been harder to launch, and you'd have got more challenge, some of it legitimate, but a lot of it just noise and bad actors trying to stir things up. So the world has moved on. But I mentioned a moment ago the power of data and AI for good. So at the moment, I think the environmental sustainability movement is a little bit on the back foot because of this shift to AI, whether it's enabling bad actors and bad disinformation through social media platforms. We worry rightly about the sort of the environmental footprint of AI and all these data centers running these sort of ever more sophisticated tools. But we underappreciate the power of these new sort of digital tools to help us transform sustainably as well. So again, I sort of talk very loosely about 3 billion items that M&S sold every year from thousands of factories and thousands of raw material sources. I and colleagues were trying to track and trace and improve that with spreadsheets. It was insane trying to do. Insane, grey hair for a reason. Now I'm doing some work with a company called TCS, and they do a lot of the IT integration behind the scenes for businesses to run these complex businesses and value chains around the world. And what we're starting to do now is build insights on individual products and almost have a product passport, literally from the first field where the raw material came from, and then the second, the third, the fourth, the factory, the shop, the consumer, to build robust data sets to enable you to track behind the scenes to make sure progress is being made, to support suppliers with interventions where it's needed, but crucially, to unlock the potential in the medium term of new ways of consuming. So let me just give you one example to bring that to life. You walk into a supermarket now, it might have 100,000 different products. Big Tesco's, big Sainsbury's, etc. 100,000 online or in the physical shop. Imagine we put a carbon label on every single product. That's great, isn't it? Is it? You've got 20 minutes to do the shopping. You're not one of the 10% who live and breathe this. You're looking at all these different red, greens and ambers. You barely understand the red, greens and ambers associated with human health that you're eating, let alone carbon sustainability. And then we put a water label on, the human rights label, animal welfare label, blah. And you're overwhelmed and you just blank it out. So imagine at the end of this decade when actually you go online, it might be Sainsbury's, Tesco's, M&S, Ocado, whoever it may be, and you're asked one question. Virginia, what's your concern? Well, got a family, we do a shop, we buy 50, 60 products a week. Can you help me make it a low to medium carbon basket? I can't look at the labels on 50 or 60 products and understand it. The algorithm will help you design the basket to satisfy your broad parameter for it to be a medium carbon basket to start with. Okay, Virginia, there's 3 products in there that bust your threshold, making it high carbon. We're going to have to take away these 3 products, or here are 3 alternatives, and the algorithm will work with you to design a basket that is as close to your needs as possible without you having to look at all these different labels and understand them. So there are some phenomenal enablers of engagement and different ways of purchasing things through technology and AI. And that to me is a microcosm of the future. I mean, everything we do in the future has got tremendous upside and tremendous downside, and sometimes not a lot in between. And again, I encourage businesses to manage the downsides of these new technologies. And that's not just environmental footprint, the social footprint associated with them as well. You know, how you can hack elections with them, spread hate and abuse about them. Businesses need to step up and say, it's not just about Twitter itself. We as users of Twitter as business have got to be putting our foot down and saying, well, we'll only work on a platform within certain safety parameters. And of course, the environmental footprint. But I want us to unlock the potential of different ways of engaging people through using them as well.
Absolutely. And I was thinking in all of this, so there are lots of challenges at the moment. I think, throughout history, there's always challenges, but at the moment, AI and, and digital, it's like this double-edged sword that we can't, at the moment, I don't think we know how to use properly anyway.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned, for example, the fact that you have to be united, with your competitors in order to get to a truly sustainable result. It's not just the retailers in general, I think, in sustainability. What do you see in the future? All of this is feels like there's lots changing and we don't quite know what's happening. Mike, what's the future like in your eyes?
So let's just start with partnership, because I think we launched Plan A back in 2007 thinking it would help Marks & Spencer win on its own. Okay, we'd get ahead of everybody, we'd get a competitive advantage. And with time, you humbly learn that 70% of what you need to become a sustainable business is a shared endeavour. It's about having the right policy frameworks, the right regulation, the right collective conversations with investors, the right collective conversations and action with your competitors and peers back down shared supply chain and value chains. There's 20 or 30% of it which can be your secret sauce to reinforce this image of, Marks & Spencer being the best provider of functional quality and emotional quality together. Of course, you should have that right to win in the marketplace by innovation. And I think the businesses that do well in the future are the ones that can find the optimum balance between working together on lots of things and occasionally trying to get some competitive advantage by pushing the marketplace on. And then people copy it. You drag them up by sort of setting the bar here, and people want to try and beat that. So being really clear as a business where you sort of stand in that space, I think is really important. I think the second thing that we've got to really think about is this, and again, I'm not going to sort of delve into it again, but this relationship with people who buy things from us, and just not just turn around and think this is about lots of labels and lots of products and over to you, job done my bit. We have to reimagine how we consume. Now, the hardest conversation I have in any boardroom, the elephant in the room, is overconsumption. And it's got a very emotional word. Sometimes people talk about degrowth, which I think a lot of business leaders of today really struggle with. But let's be really clear that a sustainable future is not about making today's products and services slightly less bad or even very less bad, 50, 60, 70% less embedded carbon, water, human rights abuse, whatever it may be. This is about consuming differently in the future. And that's hard because we are hooked on the drug of the American dream and overconsumption in the West. We can't responsibly turn around to the developing world and say, look, we've loved being overconsumers in the West all these years. We've now learned that it's a bad thing. You've got to stop doing it as well. What's the ethics in that as well? But we have to think about how we create value in the economy and for society in a very different way than the current profligate, wasteful physical consumption system we have today. And we have to face into that as well. And I think the third thing that we need to do is we need to engage people and your colleagues more. I'm a big believer that within reason, in a relationship between a business and its customer, 80% of the responsibility of making Marks and Spencer, just keep using that as an example, fundamentally better, lies with us. There are solutions in factories and farms and new materials and new ways of working, regenerative agriculture, back over my shoulder that no consumer could possibly understand. And 20% is about your choices as the individual walking into the shop or online, about what you buy, how you use it, circular clothing, you don't waste your food. There's 20% you can do, but 80% of the heavy lifting is done by me on your behalf, just making it easier and embedded better outcomes in the product itself. So they're the things that we need to do. Now, you asked a very pointed question about the future, and I won't shy away from it. The trajectory that we're on now as a society and economy is awful, really clear. And I think we're starting to see the first pinpricks of evidence in multiple people's minds about the impact of extreme weather across the planet. Again, too many people just think, bad piece of weather for a week, too much rain, too much heat, and then get on with our lives. I think for anybody who's part of that 10% who can see and project out to 2035, it's a really, really bad trajectory that we're on. And I've got a message now for business leaders, because I've talked very positive about business cases and value and how we can do this positively. Underlying all of this is the economy that's meant to serve society is broken. Fundamentally broken in terms of relationship, not just with the planet, but society. Think about the 600 million smallholders participating in the food system value chains, who get a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the value that the end consumer hands across to a retailer, to a brand, to a producer, etc. So it's not working socioeconomically, certainly not working in terms of health and well-being. A billion people eating too little, 2 billion eating too much. So wherever we look at any system, it needs a root and branch reimagination. And whenever I'm talking about the why, the what, and the how, people go, "Okay, Mike, yes, so I need to make my existing CSR or ESG program 20% more impactful, don't I?" And I sort of said, first rung on the ladder, but there are multiple rungs on the ladder above that you need to go through quickly to end up in a very different place by the early 2030s, because we can't current as we are.
Absolutely. Well, let's switch gears slightly. Let's go back to communication, if that's okay with you. I send you beforehand the DISC personality assessment, and I was just curious. I mean, I have my idea of where you could fall, but my listeners would know, because I ask this question to every guest. Where do you think you fall between the dominant, influential, steady, and cautious? Clearly one, or?
I laughed when I went through the assessment. I'm an I through and through. I talked about a team of 10 out of 80,000, and I think it's fairly obvious.
Yes.
I'm a believer that every leader at heart is either a chief exec, it's my way, we're going that way, or a chair, build consensus, how do we collectively go that way? Yeah. And being a chair can be hard because you move more slowly. You've got to, my point about the second version of Planner, you have to build consensus across the entire organisation. Even if at times you're going, just make a decision, we need to get on with this. So at heart, I'm an influencer. But you can recognise across the other three aspects of DISC that there are bits and pieces of you elsewhere, but through and through, I'm an I. And what I would say to anybody listening to this, I'm a reasonably ebullient speaker. A bit of energy, enjoy having a conversation. But I'm also another I. I'm an introvert through and through. No embarrassment in saying that. Many people are, and I didn't find it easy in my career stepping up on the stage in front of 500 people, inspiring groups. It's probably sort of inside me somewhere, born into me, but I really found it hard to do that. And what helped me get over the bridge of introvert to being a proper influence was I worked out my career goal. My career goal is simple now. I can work it out. I want to change 1,000 companies for the better and help 1,000 people reach their potential to be sustainable business change agents. Okay. And then I talk about the 6 sort of skills I need to deliver that. I've learned, and the first thing I always talk about being a chief sustainability officer is you must have fantastic emotional intelligence. The I, you've got to be able to inspire others to do their jobs differently. You can't go, you will do it. You've got to inspire people and help them do it. So all the way, words running through a stick of rock in my life, change 1,000, help 1,000 by being really good at emotional intelligence. Once I worked that out, I could put my introversion to one side and say, I know you're a bit scared walking out on this stage in front of all the bright lights, but it's the only way to help 1,000 to change 1,000.
I love the clarity of it. And I think if everybody had this clarity about their goals, because, sustainability is fundamentally vague in so many ways. But I think having like a clear goal, you can't help 3 million. Maybe you will eventually. I mean, probably you have
But
already. But
and with Plan A, I think I probably have, and all the people involved with Plan A,
yeah,
lots of other businesses were inspired or learned from it. What worked, what didn't work, of course. But one word of caution, because I talk about change 1,000, help 1,000 with a lot of individuals I meet. People I mentor, people who mentor me. And I do think it's a slightly male answer and a slightly Anglo-Saxon answer, which is a very precise number, and am I sort of KPI to sort of deliver it? It doesn't matter what your answer is, but being able to sort of define your career, and just to expand so people can visualize what I did. Change 1,000, help 1,000. I then ask myself a middle question, which is the perfect job to deliver that? And at the time I said, I need to be Chief Sustainability Officer at Unilever, working for Paul Polman. Paul wants to change the system. He engaged with 2 billion consumers every day with multiple social and environmental issues. He wants to change the entire system. I'll never literally do that job, but it just sort of said I want to be in business for a business that's global, that's trying to drive change in consumer goods. And my job at Marks and Spencer was within touching distance of that. And then this third bit, the 6 skills that you need to do it: emotional intelligence. You've got to understand the business you're trying to change. You've got to be able to join the dots on lots of different half trends that say you've got to change, because there's never one on its own. You've got to sort of translate into strategy. The fourth thing, you've got to be comfortable with working with your competitors while still trying to win for your own business. Lots of people find that really hard, that nuance. The penultimate thing, you've got to be able to take a short-term view and a long-term view. So lots of people will say to me, Mike, I've reduced energy use in the shops by 3% the last 6 months. I say, brilliant. Where next? Oh, I've no idea. I've done this. Equally, somebody else will say to me, Mike, we need to be net zero by 2040. Bravo. What's your first step tomorrow to get there? I've no idea. I've just got a big vision. I think that people can join the dots on the short and the long term and connect them together. And the final thing we need to talk about is resilience, because it's bloody hard. We started laughing at Mike's grey hair, get lots of bruises and battered face now. And that's because I've had lots of doors shut in my face. And I keep going and I keep going. And occasionally I feel really drained and exhausted. But I'll never stop fighting to create a better world, ever. And you need that depth and reservoir of energy and drive as well. So 6 things, dream job to deliver those outcomes.
that's amazing. So good. So good to hear, because I think it's so inspirational. But other people can do, they can follow their own path, and the confusion of, a noisy world that we live in doesn't help. But I think when you got some clarity, whether it's the male Anglo-Saxon way of having KPIs, or it's just, I want to help as many people as possible, whatever it is, I think it will help having that goal and some ways of measuring it as well. And I want just to touch upon one thing and sort of draw to a close, but you mentioned working with other people, maybe competitors. How do you do that? Do you have like one approach or something that you can share that shows how you can do that without, going to some sort of fighting, I don't know, commercial, secret intelligence type of situations? How do you do that? How do you collaborate with your competitors?
Well, the first thing to say, little statement, you've got to make sure your competition lawyers are happy with you doing it. So don't break the law. The second thing is, I think you've got to carve out the things to say, we will collaborate on these 2 or 3 issues that are beyond any of us to solve, but not these 33 other things. So I think defining clearly what you're collaborating on, I think is really important. The third thing, and I think this is just generally how you should chair, I spent a lot of time one-on-one before big meetings when everybody's in the room talking to individuals. What's your concern? How do you address them? Because these sessions can be very tense. You've got 40 or 50 of the most powerful food and drink retailers and brands in the same room, all with their own, want to do the very best for themselves, all sort of nervous about sharing too much. So there's an awful lot of work before and after, before the formal meeting, to get people in the right place and prepared. So that's the second piece of learning. If you're not willing to put those hours in, don't bother. This is not just about turning up and chairing 2 meetings a year for half a day and that's it. You've got to put the sort of sweat equity in there as well. You've got to celebrate successes. You've got to be willing to say, look, between us, look what we've achieved. Because otherwise it's just lost. And remember, these talking to 80,000 M&S colleagues is fairly coherent. You can do it every day. The number of times that I get to talk to Tesco's or Sainsbury's or Waitrose or Coke or Pepsi twice a year. So you've got to be able to take a step back and say, oh, this has been worth it. We're making progress as well. And the fourth and final thing is, and again, this is just leadership style. My leadership style is the shepherd. You lead your flock from behind. You let other people take the sort of the praise, the credit for the good and hard work they do, both within M&S and more broadly across the landscape as well. So there are 3 or 4 ideas about getting the best out of these collaborations. And there's some great stuff happening at the moment. Again, I've talked about data, making sure that all the UK retailers are now working together to make sure they gather the same data from the same suppliers in the same way through a platform called Mondra. Incredibly important, because there's no point one retailer asking one factory for one set of LCA and somebody else asking for a different one. It's bonkers. So people are starting to see the value of greater collaboration in this space.
Fantastic. So my last question for you today, Mike, is now that we learned about your career and the challenges and the insights and everything, what would be your top 3 tips for somebody, whether they are, well, usually my audience, I suppose, is all made of sustainability professionals and leaders. How can they improve their sustainability communication skills? Also, fantastic, and thank you for sharing that you are an introvert, but you push yourself to do differently and to flex, I suppose, also your communication style and the way you do things, because you had that mission in mind. So what would be the top 3 tips for somebody that wants to do well and communicate sustainability better?
Yeah. So I'll finish with a very, very brief analogy. Think very occasionally you might fly, you might be on the plane, and there's always the sort of flight attendant at the start that says, if the oxygen fails and the mask drops out, fix it on your own face first before you help those around you. You've got fix yourself first. And again, I talked about my career, 1,000 companies, 1,000 people helped, chief sustainability officer at Unilever, 6 skills I've got. Get that right for yourself, and it unlocks the potential of everybody else around you, number 1. Number 2, remember what I said about the word that defines Marks and Spencer, quality. What's the word that defines your business in the eyes of your customers and your colleagues, your suppliers, and how do you anchor sustainability into that? And the third thing is you've got to do this on a continuous basis. There's never one report, one meeting, one launch that sort of cracks it. You've got to be always engaging repeatedly with people consistently. This is just brand building, as any brand marketer would tell you. You can't do it in one sort of flashbang. And if I can have that sort of fourth thing as well, it's just making sure that you remember the 10, 35, 35, 20 different conversations with different, not just sections of your customer base, but your colleagues as well. And not just trying to find one broadcast message delivered in one way to try and capture everybody. That never works. So sorry, 4 tips.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you for the generosity. Thank you. So as we close this conversation, which has been incredibly insightful, is there anything else you want to share with the audience that we haven't mentioned?
And let's finish where we started. I mean, firstly, your book's brilliant, and I want people to read it when it comes out. And that really enabled me to sharpen my conversation with you, because you gave me, even very advanced years, different ways of framing things and sort of sharing with the audience. So thank you, everybody read. The second thing is the old truism, isn't it? That change comes because a small number of good people drive change. We're not suddenly going to get billions of people turning around, even in a burning world, and saying, we need to become more sustainable as a society and the economy, and we need to do X, Y, and Z. People are going to turn around to business leaders and political leaders and say, why have you allowed the world to burn? What are you going to do to sort it out? I think we, as a professional audience, and let's just imagine that we're chief sustainability officers or like watching this, a few hundred of us. What matters is that we don't just frame this through the eyes of science and technologies and numbers and literacy, even though that's important. We put engagement at the heart of what we do. And that might be your skill set. I'm not a natural communicator or engager, but I've become a educated participant in working with people who are truly skillful in it. And again, my final story about M&S. At the time, I worked for a lady called when we launched Plan A, a lady called Flick Howard Allen, who was the director of corporate communications at M&S. She ran internal communications, corporate PR, product PR, investor relationships, and sustainability. And that could be seen as a bit greenwashy, you're just in the spin machine. Actually, it's worth its weight in gold to be working with communicators, brilliant communicators, to engage your colleagues, your customers, the wider marketplace, investors, etc., and making sure that you align and work with people who are natural communicators, incredibly important as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mike. I've learned a lot today. And it was a huge pleasure to have a chat with you. Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure, Virginia. Thank you for inviting me on.